Have you ever thought that we could be just living in a huge computer game? Now, the great thing about the simulated world theory or simulated universe is if we can't prove that that is not our reality, then it means you also cannot disprove it, and you should at least be open to the idea. But also, it means if you can't disprove it, then you can live your life like we really are living in a simulated universe where absolutely everything is possible. And I think when you look at people that are hugely successful, I think they've figured this out. And this is why people that are massively successful, all of them without exception, have taken huge risks and they've made massive sacrifices, which is why I get a bit annoyed sometimes when people say things like, oh, these people with all this money and they're hoarding all this money. You have to bear in mind that a lot of these people that are successful have made sacrifices and risks that the average person is just not prepared to take. They're prepared to be completely bankrupt. They're prepared to borrow money from every friend, every relative that they possibly know, not necessarily knowing for real whether their venture is going to be successful or take off or not. But I'm not saying that you have to make massive sacrifices or take huge risks, but if you think about it, and even if you don't play computer games, but I'm sure you get the general concept. If you're playing a computer game, let's take a game that most people would have heard of, like Tomb Raider. And in Tomb Raider, Lara Croft, she has to climb these sheer kind of cliff faces, which she could obviously fall from. She has to jump over these massive chasms, which you could plummet to your death. But when you're playing a game like that, it's not like you stop and think, oh, I don't know whether I should jump over this or not, because really there's no consequences. The worst consequence is you fall, you die, and then you just try again. You just attempt the jump again. But this is not how we are in life. We're so worried about, well, what happens if I try this thing and it doesn't work out, or I lose a bit of money, or my friends might think I'm funny, or it might be embarrassing. You've got to think sometimes, what does it really matter? We're on this planet, whether it's real or simulated, for a given period of time. If we're lucky, maybe 80, 90 years. And I heard a great saying once that, us as humans, we tiptoe safely towards death. And I know that sounds a bit morbid, but what that means is, why are we always so careful about everything and so calculative about everything, when at the end of the day, no matter what we do, we're all going to end up the same way, whether that's going to another lifetime or whether we just snuff out like a candle and that's the end of it. So why are we always so cautious about everything, when if we really want something, you do have to go out on a bit of a limb? Maybe if it's a relationship that you want, you have to put yourself out there. You can't just sit at home and hoping that somebody's going to knock on the door. If you want to make more money, then you need to do something that is going to create value that somebody is prepared to pay you for, whether that's coaching, whether it's making your own invitations for weddings, or whether it's flower arranging or baking cakes or making figurines, whatever it is. If that was in a computer game, you wouldn't think twice about it. If you live your life like you really are, like in a computer game, that's why there's that saying, fortune favors the brave. You need to be brave, you need to put yourself out there, and it's not just about your intentions. Of course, intentions is incredibly important. If you don't know what it is that you want, how is the universe going to rearrange itself, or the simulation, or how are you going to reprogram the simulation to get what you want if you don't even know what it is that you want? It's like a dial on an old radio, and maybe I'm I'm dating myself a little bit, but back in my day, you'd have a radio, there'd be a dial, and there would be this kind of needle that would go across, and you'd hear until it actually picked up the signal of the radio station. That's how you tune into what it is that you desire, And then your aerial, where your aerial is positioned and the size of the aerial is what would boost that signal to pick up what it is that you want. In our terms, that's your heart. Your brain is the dial, and your heart is what puts out that current, that vibration that attracts that you want. But like I say, in a computer game, you have non-player characters. These are characters that kind of fill up the game to give you the impression that we're in this world, which is very much, you could argue, like how things are in real life. You know, have you ever had conversations with people and then you know what they're going to say next, or they say what you were already thinking? Have you listened to a radio station and then the song that you were thinking of a few seconds ago comes on the radio? You know, have you ever thought about somebody that you've not seen for years and years and years, or maybe not even thought about, and then you turn around the corner and you bump into them? There's so much evidence around that we really could be living in a simulation and in a big computer game. So if you think about it, if these other characters in your world, these other people, they may not even be real. They're just kind of filler. So if you want to take a risk and you want to do something that maybe you're embarrassed because people might say, oh, you tried it and you failed, or you're worried that you might look silly in front of your friends. Well, what does it matter if they're not actually? We can't prove that those people are even real. A very, very good friend of mine started his own YouTube channel back in lockdown, and he was trying everything, and he was doing stuff like these different challenges and the cinnamon challenge, and putting elastic bands around melons and all these sort of things. And of course lots of people are like, oh, what are you doing that for? And are you trying to make money on YouTube and all this kind of stuff? And I'll give it to him, he never gave up. He just kept going with it, doing videos like every couple of days. And like I say, in lockdown, what was that, like 5 years ago? Now he's got a very successful channel. He's got 127,000 subscribers, and each of his videos are getting like 10 to 20,000 views. So he got the last laugh. But the funny thing about that is then you'll have those people that were ridiculing him, now there can be like resentment. They're like, they feel bad now. They're like, because sometimes it can remind them that they're not really doing anything with their own life. So I'm afraid in life you can't do things by other people and what they may think or what they think, because otherwise you'd never do anything. Do you think Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or any of those people give a crap about what people think about them? I'm not saying right or wrong. Things they do maybe can be a bit strange and stuff, or a bit unethical, I don't know, but they don't care. This is the thing, they don't give a shit about what people think. And we need to be a bit more like that sometimes. And I'm not saying you should be insensitive and stuff, and of course we all have, we've got our friends, we've got our family and things like that, but it's your life. It's about creating a life for yourself and doing what you want to do and what you feel fulfilling, or what have you. So treat your life like a computer game, and I think you'll be amazed at how quickly you can turn your life around and get what it is that you desire. So I hope you found that useful and interesting. Please hit the like button if you liked that video, and leave a comment if you've got any experiences of this or any questions that you may have. And I look forward to catching you guys soon in the next video. Take care.